Well, listen, we're so glad you're here. And this morning we're continuing our series on the fruit of the Spirit. And it's from Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 through 25. And it says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, or patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such thing there is no law. Those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit." So the fruit of the Spirit is a list of 9 character qualities, 9 attributes that should be evident in the life of every Christian. And Jesus told us in John chapter 15, verse 1 through 8, he talked about, it was a passage about, "I am the vine, you are the branches, my Father is the gardener." And what we learn from that verse over and over again, it says, if you remain in me, you have to remain in me to bear fruit. And so how we get the fruit of the Spirit into our lives is we the branches have to be connected to Jesus, who is the vine. The nutrients that feed the branches come from the vine. And so if we don't have a connection with our Father God, it's going to be difficult to produce fruit into our life. And so today, we kind of skipped one because last week Todd talked about kindness. I thought I would be there. But today we're going back one and we're talking about the fruit of patience. I'm smiling because my wife Tracy has been waiting on this day ever since I told her I was doing the fruit of the Spirit. She said, "Are you going to do patience?" And I said, "I am." She's like, "Well, maybe you should let Todd do it when he comes on that weekend." And that's so funny. I am certainly not the most patient person that I know, but I'm also not the worst. I know many who are worse than me, right? And I believe that I've greatly improved on patience over the years, but I admit that of the 9 fruits of the Spirit, patience is probably the most difficult for me. And so, as I've been going through the fruit of the Spirit, I've got more emails, more people communicating with me, because we read love, joy, peace, patience, but it's different to live in love. To love like God every day, not to have conditional love. It's different to live in joy even when you're facing difficult situations. It's difficult to have peace sometimes. It's difficult to be patient when things seem to go just in slow motion. And so we're talking about these, and probably every one of us have some insufficiencies in each one of these, and so the goal is to explain what it is and how can we do that. But if we were honest this morning, and I know we have an honest church, I think most everyone would admit that to being impatient at times. Our society is very, very impatient. We want immediate gratification. We want things done fast. We want it delivered on our porch today. And, it's Thursday, and we say it can be delivered on Monday. Monday? What is the world coming to? I'm just amazed. I find the speed at which society moves today is shocking. But that creates a problem when things don't come fast. We're used to getting what we want immediately. It can be on our door. We can go to the store and get it. But the problem comes because some things, some people, some circumstances cannot be rushed. I want to say that again. Some things, some circumstances, some situations with people cannot be rushed. What I'm saying is life is not going to always move on your timetable. And so it's so important that we learn to have patience. And maybe you're waiting for God to deliver on a promise that you feel like He told you. Maybe you're waiting for a relationship to be restored. Maybe you're waiting for something to happen in your career. But here's the bottom line. We spend a lot of our lives waiting. A lot of our lives waiting. I remember when I was so little, I couldn't wait to start school. And about a weekend, I couldn't wait to finish. Then we can't wait to get married. Then we can't wait to have kids. Then we can't wait for them to go off to school. Right? Y'all didn't laugh at that, but I know what you're thinking. Whether we like it or not, we spend so much time waiting. So I think it would be very beneficial if we become good at waiting if we develop the fruit of patience. So, we need patience in two main areas. First of all, insignificant events. We need patience in insignificant events and significant events. Two different things. So insignificant events, things that have no bearing on the quality of our life. Why are we impatient with things that don't really matter? Tracy and I went to Costco this week. We were in Costco, and we had my little grandson, Jude, and we're pushing a buggy. And this one little lady, she just kept cutting me off. She cut me off like 3 or 4 times. We're doing the buggy down the aisle. She just cuts in front of the buggy. Now, she didn't look. She knew we were there. I'm going to look at bananas, and she cuts right in front of me. I go look at cantaloupes or whatever, and she cuts right in front of me. So I had 2 thoughts. I'm like, she's a little lady. So I'm like, maybe I should just pick her up, just real gently like, and just move her over. But I'm like, no, Todd just talked about kindness. That's not kind. That's not kind of kindness. Then I thought maybe I should say, excuse you. But I'm like, no, that would be impatient. And then Tracy, she laughs at me. She's like, well, maybe you just don't pay attention to it. I'm trying not to, but she continues to cut me off. She continues to cut me off. There's a problem here, right? So we have insignificant things. One year, Tracy and I, we went to Italy. We went to Rome for our anniversary. And if you've ever gone to Europe or different places where there's public transportation, we're waiting for public transportation, and we're at the front of the line. We're in the very front waiting to get on, and there's a crowd of people behind us, and we were Americans. We didn't know. When the doors open, it is on. And everyone got on the I think it was a bus or a tram besides us. We're just sitting there. We're getting knocked over by 80-pound girls, preteen girls, and teenage girls. I just got obliterated, And so I'm like, I can play this game. I didn't because I'm so patient, but now it's on. Now it's on. I said, Tracy, hang on to me. I'm fixing to, we got on the next one, right? And Terry and Ty are back from their mission trip in Vietnam, and we're thankful for that. They had a lot of good news. So when we were in Vietnam with them, they took us on this dinner cruise on a boat. It's an all-you-can-eat buffet. Well, I didn't know this. When they ring the bell for the buffet to open, you just get run over by people. Now, there's more food than you can ever eat. But it's just you just get knocked out of the way, plates flying. I look over there, and Tracy has a pair of not thongs. She has a pair of tongs. Tongs. We know where this is going today. We know where this is going. It could have been worse. I've done worse. She had a pair of tongs. Because people just take the tongs, and then you get an empty place. So anyway. Oh, thank you, Lord. Sometimes Tracy and I will be driving down the road. We could even be on vacation, and, I just want to get there. And she's like, we're not in a hurry. Well, technically, we are not in a hurry. But I want to get there so we can enjoy more vacation, right? So maybe some of you fall into that. But then there are significant events. Things like spiritual nature. These are things that shape our lives and determine the quality of our life. And a lot of times we're impatient about that. It's a spiritual in nature. You're waiting to receive an answer to prayer, and it just seems like God is silent, or God isn't listening, or God isn't concerned. He is. Maybe it's something about relationships, something with your spouse, your kids, your extended family. Maybe you have a health condition, some very serious things, and you're waiting to receive an answer to prayer. You're waiting for God to come through. You're waiting for something to happen, and it just doesn't feel like it's going to happen. And so we've been studying the book of James on Wednesday, and that was 14 lessons. This is week 13 because I didn't do it on Wednesday because it's a lesson on patience that I wanted to do today. And it comes from James chapter 5, verse 7 through 12. And it says this. James says, be patient then, brothers and sisters, until the Lord's coming. See how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and spring rains. You too be patient and stand firm, because the Lord's coming is near. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. The judge is standing at the door. Brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. And as you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. Above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear, not by heaven or by earth or by anything else. All you need to say is a simple yes or no. Otherwise, you will be condemned. So 6 times in this small passage, James uses the word patience or perseverance, which can be translated as patience. So 6 times he's talking about being patient. And the word in the Greek for patience is the word macrothumio, and it's broken down. Macro means long, and thumos is where we get our word thermometer or heat. So the definition is to be long-tempered, to be long-suffering, holding back anger for a long time. In other words, it describes a patient, gracious, and slow-angered attitude, particularly when dealing with difficult people or challenging circumstances. It takes you a long time to get hot. You know, James is a very practical book. It's kind of like the Proverbs of the New Testament. And James tells us, he teaches us 3 things in this passage: when to be patient, why to be patient, and how to be patient. So this is a dissertation from James, the leader of the church in Jerusalem, the half-brother of Jesus. And you know what he was giving, he was writing this, you know, to the Christians of the early day. And I find it so amazing that it still applies to us today. So let's start with this: when to be patient. And James lists 3 special situations or times or scenarios that we need to be patient. First of all is this: when circumstances are uncontrollable. You know, many people lose their patience when they lose control of their circumstances. I meet people all the time. I talk to literally thousands of people since I've been a pastor, and many of them lose control. They lose their patience when they lose control in uncontrollable circumstances. And, you know, sometimes I would label some of them as control freaks. They're trying to control their spouses. They're trying to control their children. They're trying to control their friends. And they may put a spiritual spin on it, but the bottom line is, if they don't have control of something, if they can't control something, if they can't exert influence over something, they become impatient. And perhaps all of us have areas of our life where we like to have control of certain things. I think that is part of human nature. But control is really, it's a facade. We never really have control. So verse 7 says this, talking about uncontrollable circumstances: see how the farmer waits for the land to yield its valuable crop, patiently waiting for the autumn and the spring rains. Now, do any of you know any farmers? That can be a very difficult life. So don't become a farmer unless you are patient. There's a lot of waiting in farming. You have to wait to plant. You have to wait to harvest. You have to wait to till and prune. And then there's some uncontrollable circumstances that farmers face. Things like weather, too much rain, not enough rain, freezing conditions. Then there's the economy, supply and demand. What will the crop actually get? Labor cost. And so James says the first thing is, you know, you need to be patient when you have a circumstance that's uncontrollable. So if you have a circumstance that you can't control, that is a great opportunity for you to learn to allow God to work in that situation and develop patience in your life. So there's 2 signs of impatience. One is if we worry, and 2 is if we try to exert control. The second principle, we need to be patient when people are unchangeable. Oh, do you ever have any unchangeable people in your life? Do you have any people that just don't want to change? How many of you, the person that said amen, they're the ones, right? They're the ones. They want everyone else to change, but it'd be a bit helpful if they change, right? And maybe that person is sitting right next to you. But it says this in verse 10, brothers and sisters, as an example of patience in the face of suffering, take the prophets who spoke in the name of the Lord. Now, last summer, We did a long series, a whole summer series on the minor prophets. We know a lot about the major prophets, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, but we don't know a lot of these minor prophets. Some of their books are 3 chapters. They're very short. We don't know that much about them, so we took a whole time. And what was the role of prophets? It wasn't a very glamorous job. It sounds like a glamorous job, but they faced so much resistance. The whole role of a prophet was to get people to change, to get people to repent, to bring them back into an intimate relationship with God. But have you noticed, and if you read the Bible, you realize how resistant people were to the prophets. I mean, they were persecuted, they were mistreated. Many of them were never listened to, just kind of rough. But have you ever noticed in your life how resistant people are to change, even the slightest change? I don't know, like all the wives out here, maybe you've developed the perfect self-help plan for your husband and he's just not cooperating. We have any of those? Sometimes people just don't want to change. I used to think, when I started, family life and different things, and we're developing leadership, I used to think that, well, for sure, most people resist change, but people in leadership, certainly they will like change. Wrong. People only like to change if it's their idea. And then it's 50-50. I've had leaders in the church talk me into doing something and making a change, and they came back 6 weeks later and say, yeah, that didn't work, let's scrap it. What are you talking about? It's like we changed this whole thing, we got to run with it for a little bit. James says we need patience when people are unchangeable, when they're difficult, and when they're obstinate. Let me say this as well. See, when we're dealing with people that don't want to change, the truth is, if we could change their mind, we would have done it a long time ago. What we really need is to be patient, pray, and ask God to change their hearts. Ask God to give them a revelation. The third thing is this: we need to be patient when problems are unexplainable. Have you ever had a problem in your life and you couldn't explain why it was there? And you're like, okay, Lord, why is this problem here? Did I do something wrong? Did I sin? Did I get out of line with, you can't explain why it's happening to you. And, used to in the Bible, people used to believe that if something was wrong in your life, you were sick, something was failing, it was because you were in sin. But we know that's not true. Bad things also happen to people that are living righteous lives. It's just the world that we live in. Verse 11 says this: have you heard of Job's perseverance? And have you seen what the Lord finally brought about? So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the story of Job in the Bible. Job went through the Super Bowl of suffering. I'm reading the Bible through chronologically this year. And so after Genesis, Job is next. It's the oldest book besides Genesis. And, I was reading it. I don't know how I've read through Job a lot. And to me, it's a little bit of work because, okay, which friend is talking? It's just, But the whole story about Job is Job's trying to defend his integrity. And all of his friends are saying, well, surely you're not that good. Surely, does the Lord inflict pain on the righteous? And all this. But he went through the Super Bowl of suffering. But the thing is, Job couldn't figure out why. Why is this happening to me? And the Bible says that Job, in that day, he was the wealthiest person alive. And he was the most righteous person alive. He had a relationship with God. And in a 2-day period, he lost everything. He went bankrupt. He lost all of his possessions. His kids were killed. He got an incurable physical disease that was very, very painful. So in a 2-day period, he lost his family, he lost his friends, he lost his finances, and he lost his health. His wife comes to him. Now, she's a character. His wife comes to him and tells him to curse God and die. Wow, what a support system. What a support system. God took everything from him except a nagging wife. I accept all the emails that I will get. But if you read Job and see if I'm wrong. That's all I'm going to say, okay? But the worst part of the situation of Job, the one thing that confounded Job, the one thing over and over again is he just didn't know why. Why is this happening to him? And for 37 chapters, God doesn't answer Job. And then at the end of Job, he comes back and answers him. So when to be patient, James says we need to be patient in 3 situations. When our circumstances are uncontrollable, when people are unchangeable, they won't change, and when problems are unexplainable. The next thing he says is, why be patient? So the when, the why, and the how. Why be patient? Number 1, be patient because God is in control. God is in control. Verse 8 says, you too be patient and stand firm because the Lord's coming is near. Multiple times in this passage, James mentions the fact that the Lord is coming back. And that is the ultimate proof that God is in control. So the New Testament mentions the return of Jesus, the second coming, over 300 times in 260 chapters. So basically, in 23 of the 27 New Testament books, it mentions the Lord's return, the second coming of Jesus. It's the dominant theme throughout the New Testament. It occurs roughly once every 30 verses. So if you read the New Testament, approximately every 30 verses, it's going to appear the coming of the Lord. It emphasizes it as a central, not peripheral doctrine of the Christian theology. And so God is in control of history. The world does not understand this concept, but everything is going to go according to God's timeline. He gave the world a start. He will bring a conclusion or a climax. So history is God's story, and He's fully in control. God's purpose in your life is greater than any problem that you're facing. So if I ask you, see here in church with Christians, we're really good at talking spiritual, and sometimes we're not good at applying it to our life. So if I ask you, do you believe that God is in control, that God is, that God is over everything, that He controls everything? If I ask that, you would say yes. Then if I asked, okay, well then why are you trying to control and manipulate this situation if God is in control? Now, you've done it, I've done it, we've all done it, but I'm just asking. So he says, why be patient? Because God is in control. James 5:8 in the Phillips translation says this, so you must be patient, resting your hearts on the ultimate certainty the Lord is coming. The Lord's coming is very near. So although the situation may be out of control, out of my control, no circumstance is beyond God's control. So I'm going to give you a truth right here. And some of you are not going to like this truth, but it's truth nonetheless. So my hope is that you'll receive it with a heart of humility. When we are impatient and we try to change the situation on our own, we only make it worse. There are many people in this room, what you've done to try to speed up the process, you've actually made it worse. If you would have just stood back and let God work, and now God's saying, man, you've made it a bigger mess. So now you're going to have to wait longer. So we outwardly say, I have given it to God, but we're still trying to change people and change situations, and I don't know how you do it. We call people, we text people, we use social media. You're only making it worse. You lengthen the process. So here's my solution. Let God be God. Let God be God. And if you really believe that God is in control, then let Him have control. It takes all the weight off of you. Let God be God. So why be patient? Because God is in control. The second thing, and this is good news, why be patient? Because God rewards patience. Tracy's sitting right here. She's making a list of all the rewards I've lost for not being patient in my life, right? But God rewards patience. Look at verse 11. As you know, we count as blessed those who have persevered. You have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. The Lord is full of compassion and mercy. So the second half of Job's life, God double blessed everything he had. If you read the very first of Job, chapter 1, it talks about all the things he had. You read the end of Job, God doubled everything. Doubled his sheep, doubled his goats, didn't double his wife, but doubled his kids. Everything was doubled, right? So there are blessings and rewards when we learn to be patient. Blessings in this life and eternity. And in eternity, what kind of blessings? Well, first of all, I believe when we're patient, our character grows. You get along with people better. Your enjoyment of life increases. You can work as a team and accomplish goals. And I believe when you really learn patience, I believe it brings a new level of humility in our life. Because we know this, that one of the number one problems in life is pride. And we can say we're not prideful, but James says all of our quarrels come from our selfish desires. Okay? So again, just some things to think about. Matthew chapter 5, verse 11 through 12. This is Jesus in the Beatitudes. He says, "Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you." So our natural desire is to fight back, to get even, to retaliate. But James says our patience with people and circumstances will bring spiritual blessings. Number 3, again, the third reason of why we need to be patient. Because God is working things out. God is working behind the scenes. He's doing things that are not visible or distinguishable. Let's stop right there for a minute. We think God is working when we can see the tangible result. God is working in our life even when it's not clear to the natural eyes. Have you ever been in a situation in your life and you're like, man, God is just totally absent in the situation? Then all of a sudden it has a quick turnaround? Because God was working all along. Let God work. Let things marinate. Let Him do what only He can do. It says, you have heard of Job's perseverance and have seen what the Lord finally brought about. Again, Job couldn't figure out what was going on, but God was in the process working things out and bringing his suffering to a conclusion. So, several things here. A delay does not mean a denial. If something in your life is delayed, it doesn't mean that God has said no. A delay is not equal to a denial. We have to learn the difference between no and not yet. There was this famous pastor, Philip Brooks. He was an old-time pastor. And one day he was pacing in his office, and his associate came in and said, "Pastor, is everything okay?" He's like, what's wrong? And he's like, "I'm in a hurry and God is not." Well, at least he knew that truth, right? I am in a hurry and God is not. And I know what you think. Man, maybe we're going to get 80 years, 85 years, maybe 90 years if our life is blessed. And I would like for this to wrap up before we get there. While I'm waiting on God, God is working. Philippians 2:13, for it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose. Romans 8:28, and we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. I want you to join me this morning. Would you repeat this saying after me? Say, God is working in my life and circumstances. I may not see it. I may not feel it. But God is working on my behalf. So I may not know all the problems you're facing today. Maybe it's financial problems, relational problems, health problems, emotional problems. Regardless, I can say with confidence that God is working in that problem, so be patient. Now let's get to, we talked about when to be patient, why to be patient. Now let's talk about the most important part is this. How do we be patient? How do we be patient? A lot of us are not good at being patient. I had a friend one time, and what he did for his career is he negotiated these contracts, and it may take him 2 or 3 years to get a contract, but once he got it, it was very lucrative and it lasted for years. And he told me one day, he said, I am good at waiting. I started laughing. Like, he didn't laugh. Like, he's like, oh yeah, I'll work on this. I've worked on some contracts for 4 years. Just every day, I don't get bothered about it. And then when it happens, it happens. And I'm like, Lord, help me to be like that. Lord, help me. So anyway, I don't know why I said that, but maybe some of you need it. How to be patient. James says, consider these 3 illustrations: the farmer, the prophets, and Job. Study their lives and follow their examples. Number 1, how do we become patient? Number 1, you wait expectantly. A lot of people in church, I've joked about this, a lot of Christians that come to church, their expector has expired. It's been a long time since they expected God to do something great in their life. It's been a long time since they expected God to do a miracle. They're living life without the expectancy and the understanding that they serve a God with limitless power and the ability to act in our lives. So we wait expectantly. So what does a farmer do while he's waiting for the crop to grow and the eventual harvest? He prepares for the harvest. Preparation shows expectation. Psalm 130 verse 5, it says this: that is why I wait expectantly, trusting God to help, for he has promised. So what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for a marriage to be transformed? Are you waiting for your health to be healed? Are you waiting for your finances to be restored? So following the farmer's example, we prepare for the answer before it materializes. Often I've found that God is ready to deliver, but we're not ready to receive. He won't deliver while we're being arrogant. He won't deliver when pride's in the way. He's not going to do that. Think about Jesus. Jesus worked as a carpenter, or you could say a stonemason, because everything in the first century was built in stone. He worked as a stonemason for 30 years in the shop, 30 years sweating, grinding, but he was preparing. He was preparing. We know that. He was studying. He was developing his relationship with the Lord so that because think about this, was there not great expectation of who the Messiah would be and what he would do? You don't just walk into that. You prepare for that. For 30 years, Jesus was faithful in the mason industry while he was also preparing for God to bless him and bring ministry. I was thinking about this. Some of you know this story. So Tracy and I got married when we were 20 years old, and we're working jobs, we're going to college, we're doing all that, and I don't know how else to say this, but we were very poor. I mean, just college students was very making by, barely getting by. Everything was a problem. Everything was a grind. And I prayed. Here's what I prayed. It's like, Lord, if you will bless us financially in the future, I will make sure that I'm a good steward of what you give us. Okay? A lot of people have done that. This is what I did. And so in the course of the next 10 to 15 years, I went to seminars, I read books, I learned about this thing called money. I learned about it. Because why should I ask God to give it to me if I don't know how to handle it? See, do any of you make promises that you can't fulfill? Because you're not prepared. And if we're waiting expectantly, it means we're preparing for the answer. So if you're waiting for your marriage to be transformed, why don't you learn how to be the best husband possible? Why don't you learn how to be the best wife possible? See, there's some things we can do so that when we receive it, we will do good with it. Number 2, so you wait expectantly. Oh, this is a tough one. This is going to get you. You wait quietly. I was talking to Tracy last night about my message, and she said this should be in here, and I knew it was in there, and I didn't want to admit that it was in there, and because she says I'm not quiet some of the time. So anyway, wait quietly. The prophets. Don't grumble against one another, brothers and sisters, or you will be judged. Verse 9, a different translation says, don't blame your troubles on others. So here's the deal. We have a tendency, human nature is to do a lot of complaining, grumbling, and griping when we have to wait. We grumble to our spouse, we grumble to other people, we whine, we complain. And this shows a lack of patience. Frustration reveals a lack of patience. Years ago, I'm not going to tell you the situation because, well, it's just not your business. But anyway, a few years ago, Trace and I were in a situation, and I kept trying to talk to someone. I kept trying to explain things. And Tracy says, they already know how you feel and what you believe. Just leave it alone. Well, I'm trying to leave it alone. But if you have to just have one more conversation, one more text message, one more meeting patience, we've already said that we trust that God is working. We've already said that. In patience, he says, we wait with expectation and we wait quietly. We wait quietly. Lamentations 3:26 says this, it is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. When we're loud, we get in the way. Too much talk, we get in the way. And then verse 12 says, above all, my brothers and sisters, do not swear. So swearing shows that you're not patient. I'm going to say this, there's too much swearing in church. There's too much swearing by Christians. Tracy asked me to say that, so I did. I've been standing out in the hallway, and I hear swearing. Come on. Is that what God's going to bless? Come on, church. Set your mind on things above, where Christ is seated. You say, well, Terry, have you cussed? I used to cuss a lot. I was in the military. I came home on leave one time, true story. Tracy was there, my brother was there, and my parents were there. And I let one go. And it was not a good one. And I didn't even know that I said it, and everyone just got quiet. You know, I made a vow that day I will never curse again. I have not cursed since that day. It doesn't matter if I hit my hand with a hammer. I may kick something, but I don't curse. I'm not going to do that. And so, so if you can't control your mouth, you're talking too much, or you're saying bad things, or swearing, or complaining, or griping, it shows a lack of impatience, okay? And that's not from me, that's from James, okay? So there we go. And here's the truth. If we cannot wait quietly, we annoy people. From experience, you're welcome. The third thing is we wait confidently. We wait confidently. This is very important. How are we patient? How do we do this thing? We wait with expectation. We wait expectantly. We wait quietly. And we wait confidently. Here's the thing. Job, it's going back to Job. Job never lost his confidence in his integrity. His friends are saying there has to be some sin in your life, but Job held his ground and maintained his confidence in his righteousness. He's like, no, there's not, Micah 7:7, it says this, as for me, I look to the Lord for help. I wait confidently for God to save me. And my God will certainly hear me. So we wait expectantly, we wait confidently, and we wait quietly. That doesn't mean you can't talk to your spouse or a significant other about something, but we don't want to gripe, we don't want to complain. So in conclusion, the worship team can coming up. When to be patient, when circumstances are uncontrollable, when people are unchangeable, and problems are unexplainable. Why be patient? Because God is in control, because God rewards our patience, and because God is working things out that we can't see. How to be patient? We wait expectantly, we wait quietly, we wait confidently. I was thinking about this morning. How do we know that we're starting to get a hold of this thing called patience? And here it is. I believe when we really become patient, the situation kind of moves to the back of our mind. It's not dominating us anymore. We've given it to God. Now, I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, we had bought this land, and we're meeting in a daycare, and there was no buildings on this land, and I was meeting with a company, and we designed a building to build. And, we're raising money, we're doing all this stuff. And, Trace and I, we always pray, Lord, keep us from making a mistake. Don't let us do anything that's wrong. You can shut down anything if it's wrong. And so we could never, everything should have worked out, but we just couldn't get it to work out. 6 months later, that building company went out of business. And if we would have pushed and pushed and pushed, even when it was clear things weren't going to work, we'd have had a building part of the way done, and they would have gone out of business. So I tried so hard, and I just didn't do anything. And man, it was probably 4 years later. Didn't do anything, didn't talk about a building. And one day I was praying, the Lord said, hey, it's time for a building. And so we designed a different building, a much smaller building, the one next door here. And everything just worked out. And so if you're trying to push something, I would suggest give it to God, be patient, and just let go of it. And God will revive that thing when it's ready. He will revive that. He will restore that. He will bring that to pass as we let Him work. Would you stand with me today? Now, I'm going to do something here this morning, and I think it's very, very important. And if you're here today, and maybe you just really there's a situation you're just struggling with, and you want to do the right thing, you want to be patient, but if you're honest, perhaps you haven't been. If you're consumed with worry about a situation, if you're trying to control a situation. Anyway, what I want to do today is, if you have a situation in your life that you haven't been able to get under the patience of God, what I want to do is I'm just going to call you to get out of your chair and come up here, and we're going to first of all repent for being impatient. Then we're going to ask, okay, God, I give you this situation for good now. And I believe what you're going to see is, I believe you're going to see God working in some situations. So I'm going to open up the altars, and the worship team is going to lead us in some worship. But look, I know there's many of you. So don't worry about who comes up first. If that's you, just come up, and we're going to have a time of prayer in just a minute.